It's lovely to see you all here, and this is a special night for me because this whole project was such a labor of love, and I'm going to tell you more about that as I go on, because of course that it was is important to why it was worth doing the Kickstarter to do it. So this is my journey to appearances, but I'm really going to talk about two journeys because Reappearances is a series of photographs. It's a body of work that I produced, but at the end of producing it, I very much wanted it to be a book. And so then in beginning to try to get it published, it became a second journey, which is the journey of the project becoming a finished book. So first I want to just say thank you to the Sheldon for so graciously allowing me to speak here tonight, to Olivia, Becky, and Paula, who've been really a great help, Matt Heidenry, and Alvin Zamudio. I saw Alvin just enter and he had a seat up here, but now he's in the back. And there's Matt. So they're in the back instead of the front, but later on I'm going to explain who they are and introduce them. Matt was the editor of the book, and Alvin the designer of the book. Ken Lauder, poet, who came in from Texas tonight, and he's going to read his poem, with which the book begins, so you'll meet him as well. And also my 101 Kickstarter backers who really, without them, there would never be this book. So I'm going to, because we really are under a time constraint tonight, the Sheldon closes at 8 o'clock and really closes at 8 o'clock. I'm going to give a little less time to the project itself and more time to the process of the independent publishing, because I think a lot of people here tonight are here for that reason, to hear why I did that and then to find out some advice that I have to give from having gone through the experience. This is the cover of the book, and I've been calling it a visual and cultural journey through the uncanny coherence in the look of the world. And frankly, when I've been saying to people I have a new book and they ask me what it is and I say that, they say, what? And so step one, buy a funny little camera. That's what I did. And there's a story behind that. My husband had been very ill for the last 3 years of his life, and he died in December 2011. I said to a colleague of mine in the darkroom at Webster University that I was just completely used up, and I didn't think that I had a photograph left in me. But the point is, I really did need to keep working if I didn't retire, because I'm expected to be a producing photographer if I'm at the university. And I said, I wish somebody made a digital Holga. When I got back from class, this person had already found something on the web that was a funny little camera made by two wacky guys in Singapore. And it was being sold from a website. It wasn't actually ever sold, I don't think, in stores. But, and I think now they're not making it. That website seems to be doing location weddings. Same guys, but location weddings right now. And it's a funny little camera. The reason I wanted a digital camera is because I really was tired, and I just couldn't imagine taking a trip and dealing with TSA and dealing with film and all the cumulative exposures that it would go through, going and coming. Where would I get the film processed in Florence? And I just wanted something simple, something that's almost a little joke that I would hold in my hand and have fun with. And when I got to Florence, I'm going to tell you later that my work was shot in brown, but you see they had a lot of little modes there, so anybody who heard me on the radio, I was not lying when I said it's blue and pink and green. So the mode that I chose to use was the brown. The brown, however, looked fine on my little finder, but loaded onto a computer as a digital file that was really a hideous shade of yellow. And so then I I stripped it of color and brought back the color I wanted in, which is this kind of, it's not sepia, sepia is a little more orange or yellow. This tends more to red and blue, and it's more like the albumin prints of the late 19th century. So I like this photograph very much. I was in Florence. I was there a couple weeks, so what I did that first summer was just those couple weeks. And I really immediately knew that I liked this photograph. There were a number of photographs that I was, it just set me free. I mean, I just was walking around and I was seeing again, and I really hadn't even thought about seeing for 3 years. Not that I couldn't, but I just hadn't even had it in my radar, the notion of seeing and responding to the world. Well, one of the photographs from this first summer was this one. You see it's now the cover of the book, but it was one of the first photographs, one of the very first photographs that I took, because we went to Pisa. I had my grandchildren with me, and we went to Pisa very early in the trip, and that was maybe the first time I started shooting. And I loved what was happening. I loved the way it looked in the brown. I was very excited about all of what was happening, but they were individual photographs, and I didn't think of them in any other way. 6 months later, I was in Paris. It was Christmas time. It was the day after Christmas. It was very gray. It was damp. But I was going to be there for another week. That was scheduled to be pouring rain the whole week. So I thought, if I'm going to go over and try to see what I could do with the Eiffel Tower, it's got to be today. And so this idea had come to me from the beginning. The first period, the summer before, was individual photographs, exploring what that camera could do, exploring what I could do with that camera. When I was in Paris, it did occur to me, I'm right near another tower. I wonder if I can go over to the Champ de Mars and find something there that will be as slightly surreal and inexplicable as what was happening in front of the Tower of Pisa. I went over, and because of the interest of time, I won't tell you the whole story, but eventually I hung around this couple long enough. They were getting their photograph taken, as was the woman in the Tower of Pisa. They're both photographs made strange by being slightly taken from a different position than the original photographer taking them. And the bride's friend was asked, I assume because the photographer was also Japanese, to hold the veil up and drop it, hold the veil up and drop it. That's going to be it. Oh, that is it. So I came back and said to my sister, I can't believe it. I did. I got another one. So that made me think that what I wanted to do was play around with the camera and see what I would do with it and what my vision would be with it. But in addition, I was interested now in being receptive to echoes between things. Maybe I would, when I showed it, I was only thinking of an exhibit. Maybe I would show them in pairings, photographs relating to other photographs. Maybe there might be 3 that related to each other. But by another year and a half later, when I was in New York City, I was already thinking of the sequence. Because in that intervening time, so many things started to relate to so many other things that pairs and triptychs started to become longer sequences. And at one point I realized, I think this works as a complete sequence. I think I'm going to be able to do something in which it flows from beginning to end with all of the reappearances. The word reappearances meaning what you think it does, but also the small re. It's really about appearances, because a lot of this is about why the way things look is so significant and why it speaks to us like a language. Anyway, so by the time I was in New York, I said, well, obviously I'm going to buy one of those circle cruises and go up and down the East River and see what happens if I stand by people and watch what happens as I go by the Statue of Liberty. So I went up and down the East River, because now I'm really thinking that it's a sequence. And so you see how from the very first summer till 2.5 years later, it changed, it grew by the way photographs related. Another example of that is this one was from that first summer. In fact, it was the same day I did the Japanese couple. It's also at the Champ de Mars. It's a little ride that's there every Christmas. And I liked the photograph, and I thought of it as all these little sparkly things. And one of the places that I went to when I was truly, truly building the sequence, and I had a sabbatical from the university, and I was traveling to domestic cities. I went to Las Vegas. It was, to me, a no-brainer to go to Las Vegas because it was full of the echo of anything real anywhere else in the world. And I had Eiffel Towers, then I'd have a fake one, I'd have all kinds of fake things. But I also spent a day at the Little White Wedding Chapel. I wanted to do drive-through weddings. This couple is getting married at that very moment. They are Kickstarter backers. They have the book. And my photographs of them ended up being their wedding pictures because they were just getting married, you know, in a dusty car going across the country. Anyway, as I was laying it out, then I would start to see how this related to that, how this related to that. So, that's how a spread in the book looks. I mean, it's clear now that they're perfect for each other, and it wasn't like the Eiffel Tower when I was saying, I have that, I'm gonna look for this. But it was, I'm looking, you know, there's sparkly things, oh my gosh, I really like this, there's all this texture. But really it was the quirkiness of the drive-through wedding. That's how I did it, because at a certain point I had photographs and I made index size thumbnails of all of them, and I put some board on my dining room table and I just started to lay them out, things that I all along knew would go together, and then other things that I'd come back the next day and change them. A couple friends came over and gave me some feedback, and then called later that night and said, oh, remember that one, take a picture of it because I think I want to tell you to move that. And so it was a lot of just letting it be out there for about a week and moving it around. That's when I went to try to publish a book, and that's when I found out that I wasn't going to be able to do that the way I thought I could. So the last few photographs to show you. This is where the book begins. It begins with a very simple photograph. It's a piazza in Florence. And I had been, because I go to Italy almost every year, although I had not been for several years at that point. There was this sunlight under the Ponte del Diavolo in Bagni di Lucca. How that informed the next picture was that when, later that fall, I was at the Hoover Dam on the trip to Las Vegas, I was doing photographs from different perspectives, but it was when I turned around on that bridge and saw that white line, I went, oh yes, the white line on the Bagni di Lucca. So I was reacting to myself. I was making discoveries that were totally serendipitous, and little by little it built up to be that which it now is. The book moves from some very simple geometry into curves. The curve on the floor of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem at the entrance. The curve everywhere there but of her bra strap. So it moves through curves. Photographs like that. I'm not going to show too many, but you'll see, you know, and then it moves into things that are, well actually this was the first picture I liked with that photograph. It was a friend's backyard, and it was before I left for Italy, and I thought, okay, I think I know what I'm going to do. When I get to Europe, I'm going to take a lot of photographs of funny plants that look like they're caught on candid camera. That's what I was thinking I was going to do. But in fact, that isn't what I eventually did yet. At the very end of the project, when I was in Tucson, I stopped in while I was in Tucson to a steampunk convention. I really knew what I was going to do with that picture. And to end, I cannot end a St. Louis presentation without a little bit truly from St. Louis. So this was the World Series. The World Series that we lost badly, and it was right before the first game, so nobody knew that was going to happen yet. And that's a ballpark village, and this was a tailgate party, and the Sheldon will recognize those because they're in the St. Louis book. I do believe that that is the end of the PowerPoint. So what I want to talk about is some big picture comments and some little details, micro details about doing a Kickstarter, which is probably the thing that is not so clear until you've done one. When I went to publish a book, my Kodachrome Notes, which is actually a set of note cards with Chronicle Books in San Francisco, my contract with them required me to show them any new project first before I showed it to any other publishing house. This seemed great to me because actually you're usually trying to get somebody to look at what you do, and here I had an obligation to send it to them. I did send it to them, and I spoke to the editor that I had done the notes with. And from her to other people, what I really discovered is something that I had not been paying much attention to, and that is that publishing houses are very downsized. They have a very streamlined staff. Photography books are very expensive, as are all art books, because they are on coated paper, they're on glossy paper, they're on heavier paper, they're a 4-color print process, and there are lots of reproductions in them. And years ago, in the 70s or 80s, I had been told that all the photo books that anybody did lost money, but that the publishing house liked to have a few because that was like their showpiece. It was a handsome, elegant book that they liked to have, even though they more likely didn't even break even but lost money, because maybe they'd make 2,000 copies and they'd sell 1,200, and that's not enough books for a publishing house to actually make money. Novels, things that are mainly text, they can print 50,000 and it's much less expensive. So what I was told by everybody that I approached was, and a few of the people of the top, publishing houses wrote me several emails. They wrote back, oh, I just thought of something, I just thought of something. They were trying to be helpful, but they were trying to tell me that there is no way, unless you know an editor at a publishing house, one of the few that exists, that is really, really a fan of your work or related to you, that they're not going to be able to do that kind of niche market book anymore, because they can't sell books that they only print a couple thousand of. They need to sell, and one of them told me a figure of 20,000, and said that mainly what they were doing is books on the heavy hitters, by which I take that to be Cartier-Bresson or Ansel Adams or Cindy Sherman, or people who are having a big show at the Museum of Modern Art, and they're going to use that book as the catalog for the show during the run of the show. Well, I thought, well, then that's it, because they said to me, you're going to need to publish your own book. And I really wouldn't have published my own book if it was a matter of totally doing it without Kickstarter, because I know what would happen. It would arrive and it would sit in boxes. That, it's very hard to suddenly say to people, oh, by the way, I just did a book. Anybody want to buy one? But one suggested that I do Kickstarter. I thought that that was really something that I would never do. But when I started to receive requests to back other photographers' Kickstarter books, photographers very, around 70 years old, established, people I knew or I had heard of work that was really strong, I backed them, and I saw by following what they were doing why a person does this. They do it in the first place because it's not asking people to just give you money to do your book. It's offering value for that money. It's offering previous books. It's offering the book itself, and which is the main reward usually that people choose. It's pre-sales. It's people giving you money in advance of the book they will receive. And that by the updates and all of the things around that, you have the advantage of developing a community that's interested, that's following. Whether they support you or not, they're asking you all year, well, how's it going with the book? How's it going with the book? When's it coming back? And in addition, you know that when it arrives, there'll be at least, in my case, 100 people who got that book, so that it would never only be in my closet. It would also be with some people, and maybe I'd sell a few more. That's why I did it. And let me tell you a little bit now, getting into some nitty-gritty. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and it is not clear that everyone who wants to do something, that it's the right way for them to do it. It's a lot of work because you have to spend time preparing for the campaign, running the campaign, fulfilling the rewards, doing the project. You have to send the books out when they come, and you have to be a publicist, PR person, you have to try to market, have book events, book parties, and it will take you a good part of a year. It has taken me a good part of a year. I spent several months getting ready for mine, but I was still teaching. So perhaps if I had already retired, I might have done that in a month, but I did it over the course of the semester. Kickstarter has terrific resources on their web page, a lot of things on the bottom, a lot of different things you can click on and get little short workbooks on how to budget, for example. That's one that's very important, because one of the things you have to do is know what you're going to ask for. And how are you going to know that until you figure out everything that it's going to take you to do this project? To do a book, for example, which is what we're talking about tonight, it's not just the book, because the Kickstarter, since you have decided to do it that way, involves a lot of rewards, and you're probably going to have to buy those rewards. I gave previous books as rewards, so I had to contact and find out what my author's cost would be on them. I had to set up an author's account with Hachette, who distributed the cards. And then I called Matt Heidenreich. And so my first plug for professional standards in independent publishing is that, having done something with him before, and that was the Kodachrome book with Bill Barrett at Webster University, I had learned through his editing that there are standards, there are styles, there are conventions that govern the production and design of a book in the United States. I know that this is true in other countries too, but the first book I did was in Italy, and the editor kept saying, you can't do that, you can't quote that way, and I thought it was just Italian stubbornness. But once I talked to Matt, I started to realize, oh, all editors do that. And so I called him, because I would not have done this unless he answered yes to this question. If I get the funding to do a Kickstarter, will you work with me freelance and edit this book? He's no longer with the press he was at, he's doing something different, and probably that was why he could say, yes, I could freelance and do this, but he said yes. And I'd asked him to bid the book out. We discussed the size, the number of pages, the kind of paper, and that's how I knew what to ask. So you have to figure out what it's going to cost you to do that. But people who I've talked to who are really negative about their experience and say, I spent far more money than I ever took in, it was a disaster, because they really didn't think of some other things, and Kickstarter helps you think of those things. I mean, what are the envelopes? What is the mailing labels? What is the tape, the packing tape? What's the postage for all the rewards? What's the acquiring of the rewards? What's the postage for the books where they're going to have to be sent when they come back? There are a lot of costs. You need a video. Do you need to pay somebody to make your video? And so you have to really make sure you ask for, think of all the things it will be. But on the other hand, here's one thought that I have. Kickstarter says, think of everything you need and then add some money to it in case you forgot something, and don't ask for anything less than you come up with. Well, I understand what they're saying, because if somebody has no money to do a project, and if that project won't get done if they forgot some of the expenses and didn't get enough to do it, it's bad for Kickstarter, it's bad for their backers, it's just not good. So they want you to ask for enough. But I will tell people that if you have some money that you're willing to put into it, you know, I would have been willing to put a few $1,000s into this book. I should have asked for a few thousand less. That would have made it a lot less nerve-wracking, less nerve-wracking for me during the campaign. Because you know, when you reach your goal, mostly what happens is people start giving more. It's not like they stop there. It's like, this is a winner. People want this, you know? And so I wanted too. And so if you go low, then you are unlikely to be approaching the end and thinking, do I give all this up? Because, you know, it's just a little bit short, and look at how much people pledged. So that's up to you and for you to think about. You have to prepare some way to let people know that you've launched your campaign. I just thought, I mean, I knew that I needed to do that, and I did that because I had gotten announcements from other people. But somehow I just thought there was something magically viral about Kickstarter. You put something up and everybody's kind of floating around, and all these people you don't know are going to give to you. But in fact, the Wharton School of Finance has been doing, one person, a professor there is doing some surveys and some collecting data on Kickstarter, and pretty much all but a few Kickstarter campaigns that raise the money. It's friends and family, colleagues, people who follow your work, people who admire your work. It's not people you don't know. And so they are not going to be on Kickstarter. You have to launch at a point when you can immediately let as many people as you can know that you have just put on this Kickstarter campaign. The video, I would say longer. I mean, longer is not good. Mine was too long. Because what I learned is the people who are in my generation and older will read the text. I've now backed 6 Kickstarters and I've never even watched a video. I don't watch the videos, I read the text. That's how I learn about things. The people who watch the videos are the people going, you know, surfing around, and they're just going to click on that video, and if it bores them in the first 30 seconds, they're going to just go to something else. And so if you want to appeal to younger generation that is used to really, you know, cool, fastly edited videos, then you need to try to make your video for them and make the text describing it for all the other people who will get information the old-fashioned way. What I want to say about building the page and launching is that I kept saying, I had one friend who had just done this right before me, he's one of the people, and he kept saying, oh, it's like no-brainer, you can just do it, it's just very easy. But I couldn't picture how that would be. Now I can tell you that Kickstarter has so many tools that when you click on build a campaign, you have a place to insert your video, an editor that will allow you to do the text and insert photographs. You have the award part of it that's going to say, first award, what is it, how much is it for, how many are you offering. It's just going to do all of these things that when you eventually say, okay, preview, it looks just like everybody's Kickstarter campaign. You didn't have to figure out how to design the page to make it look like that. It's just automatic. And then it gives you other tools. When you're ready to go, you send it to Kickstarter to get approved. You can ask them to give you feedback. They're the ones who told me that my video was too long. I made it shorter. And, but you get a launch button. Now that launch button is good for good. You know, I mean, it's not like you have to do it the next day. You have to decide when and where to do this. And I will say that one thing I did not do was count ahead. I made mine 30 days. There's different ranges. 30 is one of the middle of the range and one of the common ones. 60 is the longest. And I didn't look to see that when I launched at 9:15 in the morning, thinking that's good, I'll have the whole day the first day, that if I'd counted ahead 30, it was Sunday morning at 9:15 that my Kickstarter ended. Even if people had put in their calendar on March 31st, which is at the top of the page the whole time, that it's through March 31st. March 31st, remember to go on and pledge to Susan, they would have woken up and it would be over and too late. So I don't think early morning is a good time. When you go live, launch this campaign, you have to then starting to announce this to people, whether it's through email list. I did it through email. I wasn't on any social media. Henry said to me, you've got to get on Facebook. I mean, you're not going to be able to do a Kickstarter without Facebook. But I didn't want to be on Facebook, so I did do it without that, and I had a mailing list, a number of separate mailing lists, and then you launch, and you have to launch in order to even finish your announcement that you've had designed, because you don't have a link to the campaign until it's live. So you launch, you go there, you copy your link, you put it into your announcement, and you start sending it out. And I want to say that I broke my mailing list down to lots of little lists so they wouldn't end up in people's junk mail or spam. And I did it blind carbon copy, you know, I did it to the various lists to me. And by the time I was sending it to my third list of 20 out of 600 people, 30 lists, I had 3 pledges. And Christine's here. She was one of the first three. I don't think Jennifer Silverberg and Mark Appling Fisher, and then Christine were the first. I went, oh my God, I just not even sent it out yet, and I have some pledges, which is very heartening. Here's something that I think you probably won't hear anywhere else, but you're hearing it from me, and it's probably going to help a lot, because I had no idea that so many people who I sent this to would not know what was going on, would not have any idea what this announcement or these updates I kept sending them were. You know, there's a lot of people in the world, and in my case, it wasn't only people in their 60s and above, it was almost that. But I have a couple cousins who, you know, are younger, but they didn't know what was going on either. And so I noticed that no one in my family was giving me any money but my sister. And I knew that I had cousins who would have been glad to. I had relatives who would have been glad to participate. Kickstarter sends you informational things through the whole campaign. You're a quarter of the way through. Did you tell your family how much you care about this? If they hadn't sent me that, I would have never thought of this. They said, you know, most of your supporters and the earlier supporters to give the campaign momentum is your family. Explain to them you care. Explain to them this is important to you, and you hope they participate. So I thought, I'm going to do something that is really, I'm going to write a letter to all my cousins, an email, and say, I am very confused because I've been sending this for about a week and not a single person has participated. And I'm thinking maybe you think I'm just keeping you apprised of recent projects and that I didn't really want you to participate, but yes, I really was hoping you would. It's really important to me, and this is why I'm doing the book this way. I'm not trying to tell you have to back me, but if you didn't think I was sending it to you for that reason. And I got immediately a bunch of emails and several phone calls, long distance phone calls, saying, thank you for writing that because we don't know what's going on. You know, what is this? What is Kickstarter? So the thing is that it was that community of people also who had trouble pledging. I had a lot of people calling me, people who don't buy things online much, aren't so used to navigating the PayPal or the payment screen. Kickstarter has its own. It's a very fussy screen. If you don't fill it in exactly the way it wants you to, it won't take the pledge, but it won't tell you it didn't take the pledge. So I started to have people calling me and saying, I keep pressing pledge over and over again, and I'm not sure it goes through because nothing's ever telling me it went through, and I'm afraid I've given a lot of money. So I said, look, I have a dashboard, because after you start, once you launch, you have in the back end new tools, one of which is the updates, and one is a dashboard telling you who's pledging, and every little action. Somebody pledged, somebody increased their pledge, you sent an update, somebody this, somebody messaged you, somebody made a comment. Everything is in this list from the bottom up. And I'd say, I know you didn't. I'm looking here, and you're not here, and I know that it will not even take money from the same person twice, because that's how it's built, to not take a second pledge. If you pledge again, it won't take it, but if you pledge again at a higher level, it just tells me that that somebody has upgraded their pledge. And so I started to offer that that I walk them through that if they wanted that. And in doing that, I started to learn that some of the problems were that people were using auto fill-in, and it didn't like autofill. That some people were putting dashes or spaces between the numbers in their credit cards, and it wanted the numbers all in a row. And so I would have sent out a letter if I had known this to the people that I selected on my list who I thought might need this. You're going to be getting something from me telling you in a few weeks that I've launched this campaign. Here's what Kickstarter is. Here's why I did it. Here is why it's important to me, and here's why you'll get things for contributing. And it's a very fussy payment screen, and people have problems. If you're having any problem, I will tell you that unless you get an immediately flash pop up on your screen saying, congratulations, you're now the proud backer of Reappearances, that means it didn't go through. And you will also get an email telling you that. And call me up and I'll be glad to help you. The bad part of that is some people, especially from New York, said, well, I don't know, if they can't make one thing that I can give it, I'm not messing with it. I'm not giving them my money if they can't. I'm thinking, you're not giving them your money. It's me, but I lost pledges that way. And I lost pledges another way that is even more disconcerting. Until recently, I didn't know of a very large donation somebody in town had made. And it was really a nice donation. And only because we both have our hair cut by the same person did I find out that that person thought they had pledged and wondered why they didn't get a book. And I knew they hadn't pledged. And so I was able to work this out with them, and they went back to their credit card on the day that it's charged, which is the minute it's over is when it's charged, not when you pledge. And they could see that it never got to me. But I felt worse that for 7 months, I have not said thank you or at all acknowledged their generosity because I didn't know. And that's terrible because there may be other people out there who think that too. So that is a real weakness in the design of Kickstarter, and you should let people know. Other things in the back end of Kickstarter are that you could do your updates. This is a problem. How many are you going to do? How often are you going to send them? You have to send them. Because Kickstarter starts off with a bang, then nothing happens. Got to send another update, then there's a flurry of donations. Then a few days nothing happens, then you send an update. And I had gotten updates from other people that are, oh, please, please, I'm halfway there. Oh, it's so important to me, please, please. And I didn't want to do that, but I knew I had to send updates. And so my approach was to tell stories about my photographs, to tell stories about the drive-through wedding, how the couple, what they were doing and how they had actually, and in one update I said, perhaps they're even reading this. And then within an hour I got an email, we are reading it. So in the next update I could tell people that they had been reading it. I thought, even if you don't want to back me, and I'm going to be sending these to all 600 people on the list, many of whom are not going to ever do anything about it, at least they might enjoy reading them. Some told me they did. If they didn't, they didn't tell me, but I'm sure there were those who didn't. Then once you have success, if you do, then you have a tool for building a survey. You have a tool for keeping track of survey answers. What are the addresses you mail things to? You get their emails to message them. So Kickstarter makes a lot very easy for you. It does not make the payment easy for the people who are part of it, and it doesn't find you your backers, really. You have to do that, and you really have to take time and use. Most people are on social media. They will have a number of ways to get the word out to people. So then you're working just as hard after the campaign because you, first of all, need to figure out what rewards people ask for, order them, then you need to get all the packing materials, send them out, and then do the project. And here is where I'm going to say that Matt and Alvin, would you stand up for a second? They're in the very back row. Matt was the editor, Alvin the designer. We met the Sunday after the success at Barnes & Noble because it was important to look. I was not as familiar with some new materials that were being used for the covers of books, the way the casings were being made now. I didn't know certain things, so we went over and looked at the bookshelf. And I will say that there was, the bookshelves that are about this wide. There was 1.5 of photography books, and one of them was technical. There was a little section of photography books from a time in the heyday where there were so many, and 2 of those were Ansel Adams. So we then discussed, and Matt was the one who came up with a great idea about the relationship between the cover of the slipcase to the cover of the casing, and which, if you take a look at one of the books, you'll see what it is. It's not the same image. It's the Eiffel Tower, it's the Tower of Pisa on the slipcase, and as you slide the book out, and on the book cover itself, it's the Japanese couple, so that the reappearances idea is reinforced. Alvin came up with the idea that I had an uneven amount of blank pages. Sometimes I had a blank page, sometimes I had 2. And Matt said, you're not going to like this, but the convention is you don't have a blank page on the right And there were certain blank pages where one part of a sequence kind of segued into another. And Alvin said, why not always have two, which then became a separation page as opposed to a blank page. So everybody had input, we worked on together. And it was printed in South Korea. They chose the printer. They did everything in terms of making it happen, because I believe strongly, and that's kind of one thing I'll say at the end of my talk, I believe strongly, I wanted this book to be as professional as if it was done by a publishing house. I didn't want commas not in the right place. I didn't want blank pages not in the right place. I didn't want anything about it that would not fit the professional standards of publishing. Because I also want to be taken seriously now, and if the only way photography books can come out is this way, then the book establishment needs to take them seriously, and why would they unless they're completely professional? So I believed that I needed to work with somebody, and I'd highly suggest that if you're doing something that you want to try to sell. Then when you send them to people, I'll tell you there's something called media mail. Media mail is the new book rate, which they didn't have for a while, and it's a great help. You can't put anything in with the book. You can't put a note, thank you for your support, or anything like that, but it's what I would suggest. And then you have to start marketing yourself. You have to start learning how to do press releases, and who do you send them to? For that, I will say that the Regional Arts Commission on their website has a very good instructional center. They have something that's called Learn and Connect, and if you click on Learn and Connect, you see a bunch of different short courses that they have on their site, and one of them is media relations. They tell you how to write a press release. They give you sample press releases. You can download an Excel spreadsheet of everyone in town that's media, radio, television, or print. They tell you who the contact person is, who gets things 3 months in advance, the quarterlies, who gets things 2 months in advance, who needs things only that month or 2 weeks in advance, the email of the person, and whether they're open to be contacted by phone or email directly. And in some they say, no, not open, don't contact directly. And so, because who's going to publicize you? And how are you going to get the word out? And then are you going to have a party? I Googled book party at one time early on, and I saw that it was said, oh, get a band and have really good food and have a dance floor. But what people are doing more and more is doing it in relationship to a professional event that they're doing at an established institution. Ken Light, who's a photojournalist who did a book that's gorgeous, and I think mine is too. I think Henry's will be when it comes. I think what we're doing is doing books way up to the standard of exciting new photography books. Ken's is called What's Going On, 1969 to 1974. He was a photographer for a leftist press, and he photographed all the years of turmoil with student demonstrations and riots and marches on Washington. And so at a lot of university journalism programs, they had panel discussions, and in the panel discussions they talked about the 70s, and then he had his books. So these are all things you have to do. Therefore, I want to say that if you're kicking around the idea of a Kickstarter, I didn't mean for that to be a pun, it just came out that way, you have to realize that it is a lot of work. You're not going to make any money. It's not about income, it's not about making money, because what you get, you use, you spend. And you've also spent a year of your time making this thing happen. I would not have been able to do it while I was working, but I knew that once I retired, I was able to. You are doing this because it is a labor of love. There is something you really want. It's something important for you to see in the form you want to see it. For me to do a book became the form I wanted it to be in once it became a sequence. Because it's not a sequence if it's only in my head. It's a sequence if it exists in paper in that order. And if you really want to do it, and you want to know that some people will immediately get it, and there'll be a community interested in it, and you'll probably be able to to sell it to a few other people, then you're going to be completely happy that you did it, and it's great that there is that. But if what you need is 10 or 15 copies of a book that you want to give to art directors, or you want to make as gifts, or it's for a particular family event, do blurb. That satisfies that need. So I'm going to end by saying that I hope that the book community will start to take independent books seriously, but we all have to do them totally professionally if that's ever going to happen. And I'm going to now end where the book begins. The book begins with a poem by Ken Louter, the poet, and it's called Eyes. And Ken, who is a poet and a playwright, has come in from Texas tonight to be here, and he's going to read the poem.
I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a Kickstarter hoot. And I want to applaud Susan. She told us about some of this, but it's really epic, the work that you've done to get this produced, and the product is magnificent.
Thank you.
I actually have some St. Louis roots. I'm not a Texan. My father was born here in 1900.
Could you hold the microphone?
Oh, can you hear me back now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my fault. I was just saying I'm not a real Texan. My wife is, she's from Austin. But my roots are here. My father was born here in 1900. I went to school at WashU. And that connection reminds me to dedicate the reading of this poem to Professor Richard Stang, a mentor, a scholar, a friend, and really a wonderful man. Just one word about the evolution of this poem, how it got from me into Susan's book by her invitation. It was written almost 30 years ago, and it wasn't published until about 2011 when it appeared in my book called The Structure of the Body. But it's a poem, it's called Eyes, and it's a kind of hymn to the human visual system. We're such visual animals, but the visual system interacts with the rest of us, the rest of our brain and body and emotions. And I think of this as a poem that is showing you something of the connection between vision and that other kind of vision that we talk about when we say we see something, we understand it. The poem begins with an epigraph from John Ruskin's Modern Painters. And Ruskin wrote, "The greatest thing that a human soul ever does in this world is to see something. To see clearly is poetry, prophecy, and religion all in one. Eyes. Open. The world appears upside down. Arrangements are made at once to provide top, bottom, above, below, just so you can see where you are. How light shines on cones goes deep back into aroused you in order to let you know the bounty of color, the perfection of form, the lonely distance of space, all sent through the blue wet cornea until you blink or cry. Then you can look for someone to help, but you will find nothing more than green, blue, and red. Everything else is a mixture. And remember, your worst blind spot is not where you expect. Nothing but where artery, vein, and nerve meet. This shows you can't always believe your eyes. They are older than you by millions of years, with their jelly and water visions. Your world is visible light. Other eyes see other wavelengths. Do you see it all now? Then you can close.
I'm sure people have questions, and the Sheldon needs us all out, and all the employees out by 8 o'clock. So, and there's a party, and there's books. So I will take some, but I also brought cards with me, so if there's not enough time for all the questions, I'd be happy to answer them through email as well. Does anybody have a question?
What happens if your campaign takes off and you have a goal of, whatever, $10,000 or something, and you only end up with $8,000?
Nothing.
Nothing?
You don't get it, and on the day of your campaign, they don't charge.
I see. So they have a certain deadline by which they actually make the charge.
That's right. You have to pick, and you can't change, you can't lengthen it. You have to just pick the amount you're asking for. You have to choose whether it could be 7 days. I think that's the shortest, but I think that's too short. 21 days, 30 days, 25 days. The thing is, that's why you have to choose carefully what you're asking for. And that's why if you have some money to put to it yourself, don't ask for everything you need to do the project. You might get everything you need to do the project, but better to get what was given. Now, Indiegogo and some of the other crowdfunding sites that are mainly used by filmmakers and for some other kinds of, and for choreography, but they don't do it that way. However, Kickstarter absolutely does do it that way, and so they're going to take whatever goes in, and you will get they'll take 9% before you get it back, 5% for their charge and 4% for credit card fees. So, and you can't give money to your own campaign, and I know people fish it through other people, because let's say you asked for $12,000 and you got $11,200, and it's the night before. Are you not going to call your sister and say, will you put in $800 tonight, Because you're not going to give up all that money that you got just because of this last little bit. But be careful what you ask for then, and that's, yeah. Robert, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the slip case, and did you have to visit the printer to do a press check?
Okay, so I know that these other people who are doing the Kickstarters, these photography people, one is Ken Light, a journalist, Henry Hornstein, David Gadlis, who's doing one on the CBG Club, and with all the people he used to hang out with. They're all printing in Italy, and they're all going over there. And then they're all updating you. I'm over here, and I'm holding this thing up, and I love the way the ink holds the page, and the way the page holds the blacks. And, it's kind of that. I'm not even exactly sure that if anything was going on they didn't like, they'd ever say it. But I think this is kind of the right of being a photographer, the RITE, of going over to the press and doing all of that. What happened is that Matt decided to go with places in Korea. South Korea is now doing a lot of the printing. And there's a company in Louisville called 4-Color Print Group who is the liaison and works with these presses. I was able to see the color, and I was able to see the ink on the page, how it was going to look on the paper that I had chosen before the file went over. But once the file was over there, no, I did not see anything. And you can decide through this kind of contract you have with them, do you want to receive 2 or 10 when they're by express post from South Korea, and the standard is 2 unless you ask for more. And so by the end of November, I received 2 books. They did not get delivered to my house until January. But once I saw those 2 books, I was so happy. I was not concerned about the color, because after I'd seen the proofs, I knew the color was going to be right. I knew that we had all the profiles, as if you're a photographer, there's the profile of the paper, the profile of the press, the profile of the mode of the color. There's so many different color spaces, and it had to be right for the South Korean press. But because I'd already seen some stuff, then I knew that would be okay. What I was nervous about till it came was if the slipcase would be well made. because sometimes slipcases are so tight you're trying to pull them off. Sometimes they fall off by themselves. I was really happy when it came, and it was made beautifully. And so, yeah, that was taking a little on faith. I wasn't going to go over to South Korea to find out. But at that point, I wasn't going to go over to Italy to find out if we were doing it there either. So I bet you would have, right? Yes?
How do you know how much it's going to cost? I mean, how do you begin to know how much a project will cost?
Well, you have to write down everything you need. So if you're going to be doing the project, then you must, for example, if you're going to make something out of ceramics, you must really know how much clay goes into certain pieces or whatever you're doing. But Matt bid the project out. It's going to be a 9-inch by 9-inch book. It's going to be 88 pages. It's going to be a matte paper, a coated paper, this and that. And then the printers come back and give you a bid of what they'll charge. And I think there's something that I didn't say, and I should say this, that one of the things that happens when you're doing Kickstarter, I think other people have said this too. I was in a panel discussion with somebody who does it a lot and wrote a book about it, and he said this too, so it must be most people. Because people backed you, because you asked people to give you money to do your project, you begin to feel very responsible to making sure they get a wonderful thing. And he said that other people do. You make it better because you really don't want to let your backers down. And because of that, I remember saying to Matt and Alvin, you know, something's not a limited edition just because it has a page that says number X of 500 and I write number 1 or 2 in it. It has to be a beautiful little object. Can we just see what the difference is going to be if I do a slipcase? And that got added on and put it a little over budget, but I was happy to because I really wanted it to be an object of art. I wanted it to be a beautiful object for people who had had that kind of faith in me, which I think is a wonderful thing. I'm really kind of a little cowed by that fact, and here I am now pushing and hustling all over town, and I know there are people in St. Louis who say, you know, Susan Stang used to be such a dignified, nice person, but she's out there promoting herself, so you know, you got to do it or it's not worth doing it. You got to buy into beginning to end or it's not worth doing it.
Susan, did you make contact with anyone who'd gone through this whole process themselves?
Well, yes.
Before you committed?
Right, I did call Henry, and I said, what did you do that you did wrong, and to tell me, and he said, I underestimated the postage. But that's all he said. You know, I'm just the kind of person, I guess because I was a teacher, I'm just so used to telling very specific things that I think will help people, and nobody, well, he certainly didn't tell me anything like that. And his video was too long, so he certainly didn't tell me that, because I was modeling mine after his, because we're old fogies, you know. The person who made my video, which was very nice, Aaron Abishan Webster, told me that. He kept saying, it's your video, but you know, it's really slow-moving and long. So, if anyone else has a question that didn't get answered, well, you were about to raise your hand, were you?
Are there any wineries or printers in the United States who could do this work?
Yes, I mean, you know what, Matt's here, Alvin's here. If anybody's thinking of doing a book, I'd get their card, because this is kind of something they're doing on the side now, and there may be other people in town that do it, but I don't know them. I know Matt and Alvin, and they did a great job, and Matt is an editor extraordinaire to the place within the quotes that a comma will go for Ken's title, Eyes, and it's going to be right. So you should get their cards and ask him. There were people that he was first thinking of doing it, someplace in Texas, I think, but then, you know, let's go with South Korea, and take a look at the book. You'll see that it's as beautiful as any Aperture book ever was. I mean, that's me self-promoting. You could take that.
Having gone through this process once, do you think you would do it a second time? And what would it take for you to do it a second time?
It would take wanting something as badly as this, and to be a book. Because, you know, I can do more photographic projects that can be exhibits, things like that. But to be a book, I'd have to really want it. And, you know, I'd be reluctant. I don't want to go back to the same people and ask them to do something again. All I know is when Henry was done, he had already finished, and I called him and said, "Do you tell me?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing, I'll never do it again." So, but I would do it again, except that I don't want to bother people again, and I doubt that I'll have, this was my third book, and the notes is the fourth publication, and I'm not a youngster, and I don't know, but I will say that this work is my best work, and it came after me telling my colleague, I don't have another photograph left in me. So my final message would be, you're never finished. Thank you.
Judy wants to get a picture of the